I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today, we're talking about why so many people stay stuck, even when breakthrough is right in front of them, and how you can face the giants in your life with faith instead of fear. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I want to ask you a powerful question. Are you living your life focused on your giants or on your God? We're going to take a look in the book of Numbers, chapters 13 and 14. I love this section of scripture, and it's one of my favorite stories of the Old Testament and the Bible. I think, I'm inspired. I think, man, I'd love to write a book about this. There's just so much chalked up into these chapters that are so powerful. I want you to think about it. The Israelites had just come out of Egypt. They had been slaves for generations, 400 years in Egypt. And then God delivers them through miracles. He parts the Red Sea. He sends all the plagues. He leads them through the wilderness. There's a cloud of fire, the pillar of fire, and the cloud over the tabernacle guiding them. And in just a little over a year, they're standing at the edge of the promised land. So oftentimes we think about the Exodus when they all have 40 years in the desert, but it didn't have to be 40 years in the desert. Okay, they were at Mount Horeb, at Mount Zion. They received the 10 Commandments, and they were at Kadesh Barnea for about a year or so. But essentially, they were ready to go. God was ready to give them the promised land. And so they go in, they're right on the edge. Just a year in, it could have been just like, boom, done with the desert. But there was a massive, massive problem. And that's why this story is so critical in understanding the history of God's people. Breakthrough was right in front of them. Numbers chapter 13 and verse 1 through 2 says, "The Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites." Did you catch that? Okay, he says, I am giving it to you. The issue was never the land, like whether God would give them the land. He'd already promised that to Abraham like centuries before. He told Abraham, he said, listen, your descendants are going to be slaves in the land for 400 years. And I'm going to bring them back into this land. I'm going to give it to them. That was the promise. They knew that from their ancestors, that the land was theirs. The issue was their faith. 12 leaders go into the land, and they spend 40 days exploring. So you've got Caleb and Joshua, and then the other 10 tribal leaders going in there. They spend 40 days exploring hundreds of miles. I was just doing some readings, like maybe 300 to 500 miles total mileage. It's like, 40 days of just going from bottom of Israel to the top of where Lebanon would be now. Then they come back and say in Numbers 13:27, it does flow with milk and honey. God was right. It's incredible. So they all agree, all 12 of them agree, yeah, it's a great land. It's really awesome. But that's where things just go in different directions. Everything changes with one word, but. Numbers 13:28. The 10 tribal leaders, but the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. 10 leaders say, we can't do it. But Caleb says in Numbers 13:30, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Let me give you a line that I want you to remember. Same land, same facts, different faith. That's what makes all the difference. Same land, same facts, different faith. Listen to what the 10 say next. In Numbers chapter 13, verse 32 through 33, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. This is where everything just breaks down and goes crazy. They say, we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. That's really the issue. Not the giants. It wasn't the giants. All 12 had seen the giants. There were giants, and the sons of the Anakites, descendants of the Nephilim. That's where Goliath comes from. But it was really their perspective. Fear took hold, and it distorted reality. Here's the truth. Fear makes your problems way bigger, and your God's way smaller. That's really, really important to realize. Fear is so damaging because it takes it out of the realm of just, okay, what are the facts? And it just distorts it into this fantasy of like, oh my gosh, this land is just going to suck us down into the ground. There's dragons out there, there's giants. It's so bad, so scary. And that's what's so damaging about fear. In Numbers chapter 14 and verse 1, it says, that night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. Fear spreads fast. If you're leading a church, you know what I'm talking about. One voice becomes 10, 10 becomes a crowd becomes panic. And crowds, here's something they understand, they don't create faith. They very rarely create faith. Faith creates leaders. Okay. Faith is what defines a true leader. Because they refuse to trust God, here's their penalty. They don't get to enter the land. They don't experience the promise. And so they wander for 40 years until they all die. They were just into the Exodus 1 year. They could have just gone straight into the land. They had it. It was right in their grasp. But because of their fear, their lack of faith, they end up just getting turned away. Now, here's what's, a consolation prize or something encouraging. In Numbers chapter 14 and verse 20, the Lord replied, I have forgiven them. Now, let that sink in. You can be forgiven and still be stuck spiritually. I remember when I was in high school, I wrestled because all the other sports I tried out for, I got cut, basketball and baseball specifically. Couldn't make the team. So wrestling didn't cut anybody. So guess what? I made that team. Anyway, when we would have dual meets against other high schools, they would line up all the wrestlers from the smallest weight class to the heaviest weight class. And then they would announce the weight class and the wrestler's name, so on and so forth. So before they did that announcing, you would look across the mat and see these other kids, and you would try to figure out which wrestler you're going to be wrestling at. You'd count out how many people are out in front, like, oh, that must be my guy. But every single time, no joke, you would think, oh, that guy's a giant. He's massive. He's way stronger than I am. He looks faster. He looks bigger. I mean, the fear would just spread. You could just feel yourself weakening on the spot. It's totally crazy. And then, then the match would start, and then you go, okay, it's not so bad. You get into the match, you go, this guy's just a human. But that scary period of time of anticipation, I'm just going, oh my gosh, I'm going into battle here. So dangerous. There was a guy on our team named Nate. I remember we were doing the lineup, and all of a sudden Nate just falls down, and Nate's on his back. He's totally purple. Why? Because he's hyperventilating. He's so afraid of the guy he's going to wrestle. And so they give him a paper bag, and he's breathing into this bag. Apparently that helps with hyperventilation or something like that. So he recovered. But it's scary when you allow fear to start taking control of your life. Everything just seems so much bigger in your fantasy life. It's totally crazy. So you got to realize something. That person's just a man. He's not a giant. Your giant looks the biggest before you face it. And so what does this mean for you? Let me ask you, what is your giant right now? Maybe it's a conversation that you're avoiding. Maybe there's someone in the fellowship you need to talk to, but you're avoiding because you know it's not going to go well. Maybe it's a step of faith you're delaying. Maybe it's a job that you should take or you should turn away from because you know it's going to help you or hurt you. Maybe it's the taxes you haven't done this year. Maybe it's your expense form you haven't filled out. Maybe it's a sin you won't confront in your life or someone else's life. Maybe it's a calling that you're resisting. Maybe it's an area of responsibility that people say, hey, would you mind taking this on? And you're like, no, I'm not going to do it. Here's the reality. There's nothing worthwhile in your life that will come without obstacles. And this is so important. To get into the promised land, the obstacles were there. They were real. They were genuine. There were giants in the land. There were some scary people. There were some hard enemies that they were going to have to face. But you've got to ask yourself the question, do you want the hardship of facing that in order to win what God has planned for you? Or do you want to spend 40 years just doing Brodies out in the desert, just doing circles, just wasting your time realizing I'm never going to get into the promised land? And so it's so important to really just go, okay, listen, I have to make a choice. You got to face your giants with faith or wander in frustration. So here's 3 simple steps. Let me give you something practical. First of all, identify your giant. Be honest. What are you avoiding? Really get clear on that. Secondly, speak faith, not fear. Stop saying, I can't do it, or not now, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough. I don't think I can do it. Start saying, God is with me. I love Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I also like the Jerusalem Bible version that says, there is nothing I cannot master with the help of the one who gives me strength. This is really valuable to me as I get older. And it's tempting for me to think, oh, I'm just too old to learn new tricks. Oh, I can't teach an old dog new tricks. I go, that's not true. Okay. There's nothing I can't master with the help of the one who gives me strength, whether it's a technological challenge, AI, software, anything like that. I go, I can learn it. It may take a little longer, but I can master it. All I have to do is just stay close to God and just take it one step at a time. Start saying, God is with me. Just take one step forward. Caleb didn't say, let's think about it. He said, let's go. So I want to leave you a final encouragement. The promised land isn't for people without fear. It's for people who face fear with faith. Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First of all, sign up for my weekly newsletter. You can just do that by simply going to my website and just hitting the button for a free chapter of my most recent book, The 10X Christian. Secondly, read and review my latest book, The 10X Christian. You can find it on my website at robskinner.com, or else you can go to amazon.com, because my goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.